Hi everyone, I'm Tally, this is Farrell, and we are bored of it. And today we're going to be reviewing Lands of Galzyr. And we just found out that it's actually pronounced Galzyr. There's been some debate around this. We were calling it Lands of Galzyr, but confirmed that the designer actually does say Galzyr. So we're going to try really hard to stick with that going forward. It's going to be quite tough. Lands of Galzyr is for 1 to 4 players. And we'll have you role-playing in the anthropomorphic land of Galzyr as one of 4 colourful characters. You're going to be going on quests, maybe ending up in jail, meeting a lot of zany characters, and probably having a bit of a laugh along the way.
And what's particularly interesting about Lands of Galzyr is that it's a campaign-esque game. The story carries on from session to session, but there's no overarching narrative. However, your character, your stats, your items, companions you might have picked up, your quests, they do carry on between sessions. But you just kind of pack it away when you're done, get it out, time's moved a little bit. It's a very interesting concept. We should say that we were sent a copy of Galzyr for free. Not to review, it was because we did a preview for the game. Yeah. So we don't have any requirement to do a review. We're just doing it because we really wanted to talk about it, because we've had a lot of fun playing it. But just so you know.
Right away, one of the best things about Lands of Galzyr is the ease of setup and the minimal rules overhead needed to play. Almost the first thing you'll do in setup is mark which month of the year you're in, as that will determine the season and therefore which side of the board that you play on. Depending on the month and season, different options for exploration might be available to you, or perhaps the weather impacts the experiences you're going to have. Gameplay itself is exceptionally simple. On your turn, you can move up to 2 spaces and then you'll pick a story number which gets entered into the online app, which is called the storybook. These story numbers can come from multiple different places. Often you'll be trying to do the stories that are on your own personal quest cards, which will require you to be in specific locations on the board to be able to trigger them. Aside from the personal quest cards, the cities of Galzyr have plenty of other options for exploration. And if you're out in the wilderness between cities, then you'll get to tackle a random event. Another player will read the story aloud to you, and they'll hopefully voice some of the characters.
So the core gameplay is essentially a dice check. When you're going through the story, you'll often be presented with a few different options, and you'll pick what you want to do. You know, the classic, should you knock out the guard or should you sneak in? Each of these will test a different skill. You'll pick the one that you want tested. And as a baseline for this dice check, you can roll 5 standard dice. Now these have one of each symbol on them, but what you're going to be doing more often is swapping in advanced dice. Because on your player board you have these plastic bits, and each one will let you swap in 1 dice of that colour. Now these make it more likely that you'll roll the matching skill, but also the skills adjacent to it. The dice checks are labelled as easy, medium and hard, and that just gives the player an idea of how many successes they need for that to be considered successful. But these kind of medium, easy, hard are also bracketed further down based on how many successes you get. So you do kind of have multiple outcomes. So you'll collect the 5 dice that you've picked, you'll roll them, and then if you're not happy, you have the chance to re-roll all of them once, which is a really nice touch because it negates bad luck, but also gives a kind of little gamble vibe, which is always a bit fun to mess around with. And then you'll see the result. However, that's not the only factor at play, because there's also keywords and tags, which are things that you'll find on the cards that you collect throughout the game. And these can help you either have completely new options about how to go about what you're doing, or they can help you manipulate the dice, or maybe even get some free successes if you're in the right conditions to use them.
Interestingly, you can play both cooperatively and competitively. In cooperative mode, you're essentially just enjoying the story, and at the end of the game, you'll get an ending depending on how much prestige, points, all players have collected. Competitively, the player who got the most prestige will win the game, but in both modes, the game will end when you've played a set number of rounds.
Just so we get off on the right foot, Lands of Galzyr is a pretty brilliant game, but if you're in the market for a game that's full of challenge, full of overcoming hardship, a lot of crunch, particularly if it's a cooperative game, then this probably isn't for you, because there's not so much game there, arguably, because it's more of a story generator. But if you are in the market for something with great story, great writing, some excellent world building and colourful characters, then this is definitely something that should go on your table.
Yeah, and story-driven games can live or die on the quality of the writing, and Lands of Galzyr is actually one of the best written games that we have ever played. And what's even more impressive is the designers are not native English speakers, yet the way that they create the world, set the scene, create these really colourful characters, and really make us laugh is masterful. The world of Galzyr is really vibrant, and when you combine the story with the time mechanisms, it makes it feel really alive, whereas some other story-driven games, their worlds can feel kind of static. These time mechanisms, e.g. sessions being in a particular month of the year, and the fact that a turn is a day, are a real quality touch. They create engagement and immersion, as it feels more real that after a few days of passing, a companion that you met along the road will part ways with you and go on their own journey. Or the feeling of being shocked or frightened from an event will fade over time. A touch we particularly love is that the time of year can affect what events are available. For example, a festival springing up on the map at the height of summer.
Another very sharp mechanism is the system of tags and keywords. Now, tags you won't get to use that often, but when they do occur, it's so cool because it will generally ask you, do you have a scholar tag? And then if you do, you get a new option for how to go about that challenge that's unique to you. And it also sparkles, which is just really cool and a really great feeling. And it just gives you like a little unique moment. The keywords are similar, but they occur more often because most options will have a verb in them, climb or convince. And the keywords kind of match these verbs. And they just help you maybe improve your roll or get some free successes. You know, if you do climb and you have a rope item, I mean, it's going to help you climb logically, right? So that's kind of how that works. And it's interesting because there's all kinds of different things and different ways to play. But what is particularly great is the items you keep can also help you shape your character and your play style if you begin to curate them. For example, my Keradai she's well educated, she's well dressed, a little bit dramatic, but she really likes to get away out of situations with the gift of the gab. And when you play, you could have a completely different Keradai, which I think is really cool.
In a similar manner, it's also nice how you'll occasionally get to swap out your skills for other skills, meaning you can start out as a bookworm, but then become a hardened warrior type. It's also great for replayability because taking on different approaches will provide new story beats. So even events which occur often can feel relatively fresh when tackled in a new way. It's also smart how the advanced dice system makes it more likely that you'll roll adjacent skills because thematically that makes sense. And mechanically, it opens up a wider array of options to you when considering how to tackle a new problem.
Taking a more wholesale view of Galzyr, the whole entire system is terrific. You know, I don't think there's a narrative game out there that has a simpler and quicker setup and teardown, and that's because of the lack of an overarching campaign. This not having that overarching story also means that it's very easy to deal players in and out of sessions because their characters, their quests, their items are going to be there waiting for them when they come back. And it also means that if someone has to miss a few sessions, they're not missing out on some big story moments because they're having their own story. And what's also great is the fact that it uses a storybook app. which, by the way, can be downloaded for use offline and is very simple and easy to use and provides a soundtrack to the game. Because of this, you don't need some big, thick book that you have to flip back and forth through, and it allows for more natural branching narratives. It allows for more content, and it obviously means that when something is unclear or there's an error, it can be easily updated.
Another design choice we really approve of is the decision to make each game of Galzyr end after a set amount of rounds. It means that you go in, you do your time, you enjoy yourself, and then you pack away. One thing that we don't like about many other narrative games is that without a natural stopping point, it can be hard to decide when to stop. And without that set start and end, things can kind of just blur together. I particularly find the fact that there's a set end point helps me to stay really focused and engaged in the game, much better than other games in the same genre. That and the fact that the other players will read the story passages to you means that everyone keeps feeling engaged even when it's not their turn.
Now, you can play competitively or cooperatively, but we would recommend you play cooperatively. I mean, we've actually played the competitive mode a lot. We like the competition, we like seeing who's the best explorer. But if we're honest, you probably are missing some elements of the game if you play that way. As one example, if you're in the same space as someone else, you can sometimes, depending on the quest, help them out. But you're never going to do that or let anyone do that in the competitive mode because everyone gets points and you don't want anyone else getting points. But these kind of quests where you can help out, it might unlock new options if you have someone helping with you, or at least it will make it more likely you get a good kind of outcome and get a better story element, you could say. So you do want to do them. Another issue is that you're chasing prestige because you have a limited amount of time, and who has the most, you win. And that means that you tend to just race around trying to do the quests as quickly as possible, and you kind of begin to feel that bumbling around the city or the random events, they just get a bit tedious because they're in your way and you kind of want to like get through them because they're less likely to give you prestige. And the final thing is that how you're given prestige is generally quite random when you do something, if you'll get it or not get it. And again, it's also dependent on probably how well you roll. So there's like multiple layers of control you don't have. So if someone wins in the competitive mode, it's like, have you really won? Or did you just kind of like stumble into a bunch of prestige? Yeah,
exactly. Then therefore, if you play cooperatively, there's no real pressure. You can just take your time, go exploring, or just have fun like completing the quest together. And it also means there's no real worries about whether something gives you prestige or not. And just one thing to note, we do wish, regarding movement, we do wish that the rulebook made it a little bit clearer that you can visit the docks or the markets in the cities to essentially fast travel by hiring a boat or a mount. And this does actually greatly improve the experience because if you can travel faster, you can do your quests quicker and therefore go on even more adventures. But currently it's just something you kind of stumble across in the rulebook.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes I think we had it in a previous game where we're both in like that bottom corner over there and all the quests were like right here, which if you didn't know that, that's like an entire game of trekking up there.
Yeah,
right?
tracking across the board.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts. Lands of Galzyr is truly a joy to play and experience. It has a vibrant world, clever mechanisms, brilliant writing, and it's super, super easy to get to the table. If you're in any way interested in story or campaign games, we think this is definitely one to check out, even if it's just to see how it subverts the norm.
But if you're in the market for a kind of mechanism-heavy game, something with challenge, then this probably isn't for you. Because to be honest, it's more kind of choose your own adventure than a classic board game. But it does what it does excellently. Yeah. And I think for our part, this is something we're going to play again and again, probably right after we finish this video. And there's so much content yet to see that we're really excited to keep playing it. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing. If it was helpful, also please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. Yeah. And we really appreciate you watching. So we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.